All right. So yesterday we took a look at implementing a really simple MVC application using the Swing, uh, uh, the Java Swing library. Excuse me. And so we looked at really simple events, folks being able to just click on just a couple of buttons, being able to type at the keyboard, and we first looked at just doing a simple view that directly manipulated the model. We saw that that's a no-no. We instead put in between some arbiter in between, right? That was responsible for converting the human low bandwidth event stream that that humans generate into a modification, manipulation, or a mutation of the model, right? And we argued that that was a better solution. We actually did that, right? Our first iteration of that improvement was to indeed add a controller. The controller registered with the view and say, "Hey, view, I'm now handling your events, notify me. I'll be responsible for modifying the model. You don't have access to it. I'll do that." Okay. So that was for our first iteration. Our second iteration was adding a new feature so that we're not just handling mouse clicks on buttons. We're also handling keystrokes. And as you type, also the controller register itself, saying, "Hey, notify me of all the mouse clicks on buttons." And also notify me of any keystrokes, right? I'll be handling your key down, your key up, and your key typed events, right? And I'll look at it depending on the character. I'll do a couple things. I'll either switch toggle the color of the font, or I'll just capitalize everything. Yes? Okay. So that was our first feature improvement. We're gonna do a little digression here. Into some concerns that might be happening under the scene, right? One of the concerns is that whenever you press a mouse, or whenever you type a key, that actually generates a stream of all sorts of events, right? We logically want to think about it as a single atomic thing happening, right? We type the key, but that's only a logical abstraction. To type a key, you actually at least you need a down and an up, at least those two. But actually, internally, there's a whole bunch of buffering that happens on the hardware, and also at the software level that cleans up these electrical signals into a logical keystroke. Yes. So there's always a concern of how much do you care about the raw unfiltered data, and do you care about that low-level noise, or do you prefer this high-level, this very high-level representation that is a logical representation of a key typed? Yes, and that happens at every level of engineering, in software engineering, right? What for you is low level. I'm sorry, what for you is high level, right? For somebody else is low level, right? It's very relative. Right, for you might be implementing a library that does all these really cool 3D transformations, and you're dealing with all the pixels and the triangles, and you're doing all this optimization. For you, maybe pixels and lines are the low level, but your algorithms of transformation is it's your abstraction layer, yes? And for you, that is very high level. Now, somebody who's using your library, right, doesn't even want to think about how you're representing the lines and any of those triangles. So for them, your library is very low level, right? And their game is the abstraction layer on top of what they built using your library. Yes. So it's always very relative of what is low level or high level, and again, we are abstraction machines, right? That's what we've been doing for thousands of years. We understand something. Once we understand it, we draw a box around it, and we never care about the internals, right? And then we use that little box to build another bigger box, right? And then we box it again, and we never think about it, right? And we've been doing that for thousands of years. So let's talk about what we mean by low and high events. When we think about pressing a key, right? There's a lot of things that are happening, right? Just imagine typing the capital A. Well, that means that the shift. Now you have to include a combination of keystrokes, right? You have to first type the shift, right, and then the combination of that shift with another character A. Both the shift has a down and an up, and the keystroke A also has a down and an up that then is released. And this choreograph of multiple events, eventually become your logical capital A, right, that shows up in as an event for you to handle. Do you care about all this low level? Maybe you don't. Thankfully, we don't have to, right? All these libraries, the Swing library and many other graphical libraries that deal with human user interaction, create these nice levels of abstraction, just like a language creates all these nice abstractions such as characters, strings, integers, and floats, right? Because we don't want to deal with the zeros and ones. So it creates this nice level of abstraction from where we can build. So same thing here. All these events, do you care about each single up and down? Maybe you don't. Maybe you just care about the just character A, yes? So it would be tremendously tedious, right, to have to deal with all this noise of all this happening underneath. Just even consider going a little further, typing some non-English character where it has an accent and has a tilde or has some weird other characters from other languages, right? Oftentimes it might take you, typing 2, 3, 4 combinations of different keystrokes, to just get one character, right? And in the jargon of dealing with these different layers of abstraction, oftentimes we refer to it as this combination of keystrokes. We refer to it as like a chord, like a chord in a piano. You type, you play 3 or 4 notes at the same time, and that is a logical chord, right? And so we often use that jargon of referring to these layers of abstraction. Now, depending on what it is that you're building, maybe you do care about these low-level events, right? Maybe if you're a gamer, you're building a game, you do care about every single keystroke of as a player makes all these nuance movements at the keystroke, right? But if you're just a word processor, maybe you don't, right? So again, it depends where you sit in that various gray area of what is high level and what high level. It's everything's so relative, right? That this low level, this high level, there's no clear distinction. There's no line that you need to cross and say, okay, well, this is high level, this is low level. It's all very relative to where you are in the food chain, right, of the software engineering process. Even we never even considered. We're talking about keystrokes, right? About you press it down, you press it up. It's a typed keystroke. That's also true with mouse. Yes.
Wait, clicked is like the same as type. It's like the whole action. It's the whole action.
Exactly, right? Notice that we never even questioned action performed, right? Or action event. Action event is an abstraction of you pressing the mouse, and it has exactly the same issues as typing, pressing a keystroke, right? Thankfully, the J button, right? The Swing's J button model component, right? Abstracts all those things, right? It abstracts the fact that, well, if you press me, I'm just going to generate an event, right? An action performed, and I'll invoke whoever you want me to. Right? You don't have to bother whether the mouse went down and then it went up, how long it was held down there. I'll just notify you, right? It abstracts all these things. We never cared about it. If we wanted, maybe we do. Depending if I want to, instead of pressing the mouse, maybe I want to draw something, right? Where I press, right, and then I move the mouse. Maybe I do care, those low-level events. We never did, right? We just used the J button, right, to just abstract all that away for us, right? Because we don't really care. I just really want to care when you press it, and that's it. Okay, but maybe you do. So the same kind of thing is happening in our controller, right? we are at a point where we need to look at it as at a controller, look at it again and say, what is our controller doing? Our controller seems to be caring about all sorts of low-level events, right? Of pressing a button, of pressing a key, handling all these events. And maybe we don't care about all these low-level events. Ideally, what we could do instead is perhaps the view, when it generates all these events, right? Instead of sending all these low-level keystrokes and actions, perhaps abstract it and give me something that is more specific to my application, right? My application is, I don't really care about pressing. I want to know that should I echo, right? Should I clear the screen? Those are all high-level events that are built on top of some low-level keystroke or some low-level mouse pressing. Yes? I like to abstract them and have some syntax or some wrapper, right, that allows me to forget the fact that these are keystrokes or these are button presses, right? I'd rather you give me something that is more akin to what we're working here. We're working on being able to clear the screen. We'd like to be able to change the color, toggle the color. All right, that would be a nice abstraction on top of typing the keystroke C, right? A nice abstraction would be toggle color. Right? That's a high-level abstraction. Or capitalize or uncapitalize. Those are high-level abstractions of events that underneath are built off of these keystrokes and these mouse. Yes? Right. So again, we are at a design decision. Should we do that? Do we care about the low-level stuff, or we don't care? Right? Probably not. Probably don't care about this low-level stuff. Let's wrap it, inside of a command, right? That internally is built up of all these low-level stuff that we don't really care about. Yes. So to do that, right, we're going to apply a design pattern we introduced earlier, the action command. Right? If you remember, the action command, instead of having these switch statements, yes, these hard-coded switch statements, where you had every single switch case represented there. Instead, what we did is we built maps. Right? We built maps, and based on those maps, we could add new commands. We could dynamically generate new commands, right? And depending on some token, we would run one command or a different command, and that made our controller so much more flexible, right? It allowed us to very easily add commands, right, without having to muck around with switch statements or anything like that, right? It concentrated our flexibility into manipulating a map, yes, and which made it much more easy to maintain, right? So that's where we're gonna go forward, right? We're going to we're going to abandon these low-level events that are way too generic, right? And instead going to wrap them in something that is a little more specific to our particular implementation. Again, our implementation is trivial, right? Changing the color, right? And or capitalizing, but nevertheless, it points out the principle, right, of deciding whether you want to be more specific. We're gonna substitute and translate these all very generic low-level stuff into something that is more application-specific high-level events. Okay? All right.